Hi, and welcome to another LRCC Soundbite. This week, no surprises, I'm going to carry on telling the stories that I've been telling about Jesus, written by a guy called Luke. They're all recorded in the Bible. And this week, Jesus' disciples are caught doing something that by the other religious leaders at the time, who they thought this was against the law. Now, have you ever been out for a walk, in the country maybe, and you've seen blackberries alongside the path you're walking on, maybe picked a few as you walked and enjoyed eating them? Well, in this story, Jesus and his disciples happened to be walking through a wheat field. The disciples started picking at some of the ears of wheat as they walked and rubbed the husk off in their hands and were eating the grain. Now, I should point out that was perfectly normal and accepted at the time. In fact, custom dictated that hungry travellers were actually encouraged and allowed to pick wheat in this way. Today, of course, it's not quite the same because farmers are growing it in a field and they tend to get cross if you go in and just start picking it. But it was different then. That's why I thought blackberries probably closer to today. Anyway, a religious group picked up on this and they complained because this was happening on the Sabbath day, and the law said you couldn't do any work at all on the Sabbath, and they thought that picking grains of wheat was the same as harvesting, and that counted as working, therefore it was illegal. So I can kind of understand the logic in one way, but doesn't common sense suggest that just taking a little bit to satisfy you because you're a bit hungry in the moment, it's not quite the same thing? And I think that's the same sort of lines as Jesus went along when he replied to them. See, Jesus knew the ancient writings really well. He was a teacher after all. And he gave them an example that they would have been familiar with. A time when the letter of the law in one part didn't quite fit with the spirit of the whole law in that particular situation. It was related to a specific situation and in a specific moment where the right thing to do was not necessarily the letter of what was written. Jesus basically told them that the law needed to be interpreted and contextualized into the moment, made right for people. Much of the law concerned looking after strangers, making sure that the needs of others were met, not allowing people to go hungry. And Jesus really finished by saying that this Sabbath day, this day where they weren't supposed to do any work, it was created for them. It wasn't created that they therefore had to not work, but it was created to give people time for a rest. And, I think we're really familiar these days with needing some downtime in our lives. If we don't, people burn out. And then you're no use to anyone. In fact, it can be worse than that, can't it? Because sometimes the mental damage of burning yourself out can be really severe. The idea of taking one day every week and just making space to rest, that's what it was about. It wasn't a way to make an excuse to allow hungry people to stay hungry. It's a common mistake, I think, sometimes when people think about the Bible to assume that it's just a series of rules and regulations telling you what you must or mustn't do in particular situations. The reality is quite different. A lot of it is stories and advice that illustrate how we're supposed to live. It shows us something of God's character and encourages us to become more like that. In our attitudes, in our sympathies, in our ability, in our attitudes. It's not trying to make us all the same. In fact, it celebrates that we're all different. But it helps us see how God hopes we might behave towards one another and not just dictate how that should look. If you don't have a copy of the Bible and you live near us, then if you want a copy, do let us know. There's a form on our website, or just pop round to 44 Lindbergh Road anytime. We're always outside on a Sunday afternoon, or any other time. We'd love to give you a copy, completely free. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.